Hello everyone, good morning. Hope you guys are doing good.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so let's get started. I will ask you guys if you have any questions or queries from the previous session. We can start with that. Else we'll move on to the new topic. So did you guys try it out yesterday? Whatever we learned about web scraping, handling with multiple different kind of other data formats. So did you guys try that out? Yes, no. Did you guys face any challenges or issues on that? No? No issues? I hope I'm audible. Can anybody confirm? I think today we have got very shy audience. Can anybody confirm if I'm audible? Okay, fine. So people who have already responded, I am guessing that you guys don't have any questions or queries, or everything is clear to you. I will assume the positive side. I will not assume that you guys have not tried. Okay, but I mean, yeah. So on serious note, please try it out. And if you guys have any questions, concerns, so actually I try to allocate 15 minutes before or 15 minutes at the end to you guys whatever queries you have to solve it, in today's in the live class. So there will be two things will be benefited, right? The one person who is asking, that person will get benefited, along with all other participants, whoever joins, right? 150, 200 people, whoever is joining. So even if they have not tried, but they will come to know, okay, so this kind of problems might happen, or how to resolve such issues. So think like that, like, if you are asking any questions or queries, only not you are the one who is getting benefited, but rest of all the class is getting benefited out of it, right? So please try that out, try things at your own. Okay, and if you guys have any issues, any challenges in any kind of things, you can ask and reach out to me. Okay, so with that, let's get started to the new topic then. Let me share my screen. So today we are going to learn about data and classes, actually classes and objects. Okay, so yesterday we did a quick brush up about functions. So you can think of, like, function is one level. So what function do? Basically modularize your code, right? Do the modularization of your code, make it in a proper structure format, ताकि आपके पास कुछ extra line of code है, or very much repetitive code है, you can keep that in a different file. And then we also saw that how you can call functions from different file, right? You can simply load the some other file in one notebook, right? And then you can simply call out those functions from there, isn't it? So it acts like a module, right? So all these things are nothing but to help you out, make your code more structured, more cleaner, and more, faster as well. Okay, so these are the few things which really helps. So on the similar line, there are classes and objects defined to make your code even more structurized and hierarchical. So what is hierarchy? So hierarchy is, so we have our grandparents, then we have parents, and then we have our generation, then we will have our children's, right? So that's what the hierarchy. Same wise here. So these classes and objects take care of hierarchy. So let's say if you're calling one function from the other, similarly, one function from the other, one function from the other. So think like, very big libraries like pandas. So if you get a chance and you really want to open and see the codes, right, you can actually check it out. So in the break, I'll try to search and try to show you guys the actual code of pandas library, which you guys leverage, okay, by simply importing that module. So whoever has written it, they cannot just blindly write and dump everything, because then it will be very difficult for them also to read it and understand it after, let's say, 1 month or 2 months, when everything is not very clean, right? Why we keep everything organized, tell me? Even at home also, right? So the concept is same. Home, घर पे भी आप लोग चीजें organized रखते हो, right? You have a bookshelf. It's not like you dump everything in a carton and then you yourself will face problem, right? Whenever you want to use that thing again. Same thing in here in code also. In code, it's even more challenging, because you have to read through line by line to find something what is happening, versus you have created different files. Let's say these are files for just a particular function, right? Similarly, for some other function, you have created a separate file or a separate class. So all these things are, make your code even more structurized and hierarchical. So along with functions, we use classes and objects as well. Okay, so I hope it's clear that why do we need it. Now let's understand what it is and how we can use it. Okay, just give me a moment. Yeah, sorry. So let's say take right. So what is class and what is object? Okay, so let's take this example. So if, like, let's take example of class itself. So in a class, so this is a class, right? So this is a class. Now here in this class, what objects we can have? So we have our names, right? The students, whoever has enrolled for this class, they have name. They might have their unique Zoom ID or Zoom name, right? They might have some other thing as well. Similarly, in a class, people have like students have name, roll number, their subject name in which they are enrolled to, their subject marks or test. So all these are nothing but objects of one class, right? So there is a class. So in class also there are different sections, right? So just like that, imagine it's a class of fifth, right? And whoever has a students of it, right? So those are persons, those are not objects, those are persons. Now what different kind of attributes those students will have, those things we called object. Like roll number हो गया, name हो गया, subjects enrolled हो गए, right? All these things are object. ओके, सो सेम थिंग कि यहाँ पर क्लास क्या है, बिल्डिंग का क्लास है ना, उस बिल्डिंग में ऑब्जेक्ट्स बहुत सारे हो सकते हैं, लाइक हाउ मेनी फ्लोर, नंबर ऑफ फ्लोर्स कुड बी वन ऑब्जेक्ट, number of doors could be one object, number of what all different kind of attributes you can think of, those could be object, as simple as that. Okay, so this person, yeah, Goodyear Van Rossum, has designed the language according to the principle first class everything. So he wrote, one of my goals for Python was to make it so that all objects were first class. By this, I meant I wanted all the objects that could be named in the language, example, integers, strings, functions, classes, modules, methods, and so on, to have equal status. Okay, that is, they can be assigned to a variable, placed in a list, stored in a dictionary, passed as an argument, and so forth. So this meant that everything is treated the same way. Everything is a class. Functions and methods are valued just like list, integer, and floats. So each of these are instances of their corresponding classes. So what does it mean? So the person who invented this concept, right, of class and objects, so basically the vision what he was in seeing when he was engineering all these things. So what he said is that he wanted that all the objects, अभी तक हमने जितने भी data types पढ़े हैं, right, strings पढ़ा है, integer पढ़ा है, functions है, classes है, modules है, not classes but modules आपने पढ़े हैं, methods, it's nothing but functions, right? Similar to functions. So all these things have different status. Okay, so let's see what does it mean. Okay, so all these have same status, right? So what are classes? So classes are like a blueprint or a prototype that you can define to use to create object. Okay, so it's a blueprint, or let's say how do I say it? Uh, Imagine करिए that uh, एक fruit का class है. Okay, so there is a class called fruit. Okay, now in that fruit I have a blueprint. So I have a blueprint of fruit, that what is the shape of that fruit, what is the color of the fruit. So I have these two blueprints of the class. So so these two things are nothing but objects of the class: shape and color. Okay, now whenever a fruit, that let's say apple, I want to say that it will be a member of the class, these are the two mandatory things which I have to assign, isn't it? Because I have defined that a fruit, if anything which is belonging to this fruit class, it has to have a size, or it has to have a color. Okay, so you can think of like classes act like a blueprint or a prototype that you can define to use to create objects. Okay, a class brings to life the abstract characteristics of a real thing. So basically, whatever objects, how you define, so whatever is the characteristic of that object, those are nothing but you can define as an object. Okay, or attributes also we say. A class definition can be compared to a recipe to bake a cake. Okay, a recipe is needed to bake a cake, right? The main difference between a recipe class and a cake, that and an instance or an object of this class, is obvious. Okay, so you can think like this is also a classic example. So class is like baking a cake. Now that cake could be a strawberry cake, it could be a pineapple cake, it could be a chocolate cake. That doesn't matter. Those are different three objects. But class is same for all of them. That is like kind of a recipe. Okay. So only value will change. For strawberry cake, so the property will be, or the attribute will be, you add a fruit. Now that fruit could be a strawberry, or it could be a, let's say, chocolate, or it could be a pineapple, in case of these three different things. But your ingredients only will change, but your method will remain same. And that is what the whole point of class, right? So it can be a representation of similar things together, yet different, right? So different in the sense, name different हो सकता है person का, gender different हो सकता है, age different हो सकता है, but these attribute remain same, which define, say that I am a human, correct? So a cake can be eaten when it is baked, but you cannot eat a recipe unless you like the taste of the printed paper. Okay. So what they are trying to say is, basically, class is the recipe of your cake, and all the different cakes which we discussed are the different objects. Okay. So like baking a cake and oops program. So oops double OP is object oriented program. Construct objects according to the class definition of the program. A class contains variables and methods. If you bake a cake, you need ingredients and instruction to make a cake, right? So similarly, class में हमारे पास variables होते हैं, which we call attributes, and we have methods, which are functions. Okay. So attributes as in क्या क्या चीजें चाहिए आपको, cornflour चाहिए, sugar चाहिए. So all these are ingredients, and methods is how to do it. What is the process? So that is function. Okay. According to a class, accordingly, a class needs variable and methods. Okay, so these are the class variables which have the same value in all methods. There are instance variables which have normally different values for different objects. A class also has to define all the necessary methods which are needed to access the data. Okay, so this is about the class. Now, what is object and instances? So what does a class do? It brings to life a real life thing. Okay. So this thing is an object. So as I was saying, right? जो भी आप define कर पा रहे हो class से, that is the object. An object created from a class at runtime is an instance of the class. The process of creating the instance is called initialization. Okay, so it will be, all these things will be more clear when we are working on example, right? So example is creation of a chocolate cake from the recipe of baking chocolate dessert is a instantiation of a chocolate cake object from a chocolate class. Okay. So what it is saying? What is the difference between object and instances? If you are creating, using a class, if you are, let's say, let's take this example, right? Cake ka example only. So if let's say if you have a class how to bake a cake, right? In that class, let's say you are preparing a chocolate cake. So that is the object. Object is the chocolate cake. Correct. Now, what is the instance of it? Let's say, if you created any object which is at the runtime of an instance. Okay. So let's say if you created a chocolate dessert instead of a cake, by some tweaking here and there at a runtime, that is called instance. So we will be working on a notebook. These things will be even more clear that time. Okay. So an object is also an instance of a class. A class usually contains क्या क्या होता है? Attributes होते हैं, properties होते हैं, methods होते हैं, right? Methods are nothing but functions. Attributes, like what are different variables, kind of different variables are there, and attributes and properties are almost same. So we will see. Okay. So at class level, variables are referred as a class variable. At the instance level, it is known as instance variables. Okay. Then, yeah. So let's take this class, right? So there is a account holder class. Okay. So this, in this holder, what are the attributes and properties? So as I was saying, right, attributes and properties are almost same. So whatever is the surname, pre-name, right, and let's say profession, birthday. So whatever different details you could think of that has to be there, that you defined as an attribute and properties. And methods are functions, what do you want to do within that class. Okay. So for example, in here, if we have a account holder class, so I might have to change the profession whenever it is needed, right? Because I might be a member of HDFC Bank, but I may change company, right? So if they can have a class in which there is a function that I have changed the company name, then they will simply call that function. They will say this is the old name, this is the new name, and that's all. My In all my records, my new company will be updated. Okay. Similarly, change of residence. So these could, so what I want to do in that class, that is a part of method, or we call functions. Okay. Similarly, अगर आपके पास account class है, आपका अकाउंट में क्या क्या डिटेल्स होता है, वट एवर यू कुड थिंक ऑफ इज योर एट्रीब्यूट और प्रॉपर्टीज. लाइक आपका अकाउंट नंबर होता है, हाउ मच इज द बैलेंस, राइट, होल्डर, व्हाट इज द नेम ऑफ द पर्सन who is the holding the account, right? Now in that you can have different methods or functions. That you deposit money, so that could be one function. You withdraw money, you transfer money, you have some standing orders, right? You do automatic bill payments. So all these things could be your functions. Clear so far? Any confusion or questions? No. Okay, cool, fine. So now let's try to create the classes and objects. See how does it work. Okay. So let's say, now that we have theorized a lot, let's get hands dirty and actually work. Okay. So let's say I want to create a class which is shark class. Okay. Now in that I want to define methods. So whatever you see, right, that's how we used to define function, right? So so you can say there are two methods. One is swim method, another is be awesome method. Okay, cool. So these are the two methods defined in this. And now you can do whatever you want to do in these methods. Okay, so here we are simply doing the printing operation. Okay, so we have created a class which is nothing else but, I mean, that's all. So you just use this class word and that's all. So you want to do it. So simply, आप कैसे class create कर सकते हैं? If somebody asks you to create a class, let me just do it over here. Okay, right. So I have just defined this class, right? And that's all. So you can run it. Now it has run successfully. So you can how to call a class. You can simply give the class name and this bracket. That's all. So that's how you can call a class. So you can see here you have created a class and it says like that because it's an object, right? It's a class. Class is also object. So that's how it is showing you that it has created a class. Now we will see how do we use it and what is the purpose and all. But that's how simple it is to create a class. Basically आप ऐसे सोच सकते हो एक और यूज केस मान लीजिए आपके दो फंक्शन है वो बहुत सेम सेम से हैं लाइक सिमिलर थिंग्स एज इन मतलब लेट्स से टू वेरिएबल्स पे आपको ऑपरेशन परफॉर्म करने हैं राइट लाइक द सेम एग्जांपल हमने बैंक का लिया तो इफ यू आर अ पर्सन from particular bank, right? You can deposit also, you can withdraw also, you can transfer money also, right? So all these things are similar and related, right? All these are account operation. So even though all these functions are different with respect to each other, but still they belong to same family because all these operations are related to which should be there in your bank account operations, isn't it? And that's the whole purpose, that to create a class when some things are belonging to the same family, even though they are different, why don't you club together everything and put it in a class? So here what you can do is in one class I have simply uh, put multiple functions together. So that's how I can call a class. And but let's say if I have to call particular function, I can do that. So if I do shark dot and if I press tab, it will show me what all things are there in this. So there it is, swim and be awesome. You see there is something MRO. We will look at that later. I think I defined the class over here also. So that's why it is showing. Let me refresh. Okay. Now I will just simply run this. Okay, and if you once it is run, you just type that class and press tab after dot. You can see what all different operations have available. So you can see there is swim, there is be awesome. So if you just call be awesome, right, and then that's it. So it is giving this self. So we will see why it is giving error. So basically it needs some requirement. So but the way to define is you remove this, right? Now you see it has run. Okay, so that's how simple it is. You have multiple functions, you put them in one family. What you have to do is to call that function, you just call the class name, put dot, and you can call these functions. So you can think of like stapling all your functions together. That's all. Okay, clear? Any confusion so far? Understanding what is the class? So yeah, I will come back to this self thing in some time. But for now, you just have to focus that you have multiple functions which you have to staple together to put in a class. Okay, cool. Let's get going. Okay, cool. So, so as we saw, right, there were two functions inside the class. These functions are called methods. So any function within the class we call methods. The argument to this function is the word self. Okay, it is used as a reference to the objects that are made out of the class. We will see this in a while. So for now, you remember, you can think of like it's an argument which we have to pass, and we can use it to, for the reference to the object that will be outside the class. So when we will see with the example, that time it will be more clear. So just hold this thought for now. Then we have till now just created a recipe. Now let's create the real things. Okay. So as I told you, right, an object is a instance of a class. So create an object by enclosing the class in a parenthesis. So here I have created an object. So when I was doing that, right, when I was using this class. Okay, so how I can create an object like this? I can simply call this class, put it in a parenthesis and assign to a variable. Now what I have done, I have created an object of this class. Okay, and if I see what is this object, you can see that it's this object. Okay, so you can create an object like this from any class. Okay, then once object is created, we can, let's see what object can do. So as we call this function, right? Similarly, you can call these functions from here. So from semi say up, you can call be awesome, or sorry, yeah, yeah. Hello. So, sorry, I got a lot of sneezing. Yeah. So, yeah. So as I was saying, right? Yeah, so from here we have created an object. Now I can call this, from this object, I can call these functions, right? So from semi, be awesome. And now if I do, so it is giving me error. What error it is giving? It takes 0 positional argument, but 1 was given. Okay, so now let's see. I think if I give self over here now, it should not give me this error. And that's why self was needed. Yes, so that was a problem. Yeah, so I will, we will come back to why self is needed. Okay, but now right now what what you have to understand from this is, we have created a class. Now you can create an object from this classes, simply calling this class in a double quote. So that's how you have created an object called Sammy from this class. Now from this object, what you can do is you just have to call different methods. And in different methods, you can simply call them and run that out. So that's how you can, do it. Okay, cool. So as you can see here, we created an object, and then you can see, you can call the swim methods and you can call the be awesome methods, and it will be doing whatever you want to do. Okay, cool. Then let's get a little bit complicated. Okay, so what it does is, the shark object Sammy is using two methods, swim and be awesome. We call these using the dot operator, right? So we put this dot operator now. We put this dot operator, so which is used to reference an attribute of an object. So in this case, the attribute is a method and it's called with the parenthesis, like you would also call with a function. Okay. So what we are trying to say here, even though these are the method, right? So this shark swim function which was defined, it was a method for shark class. But when I'm calling it from an object, from Sammy, if I'm calling, right? So in this case, we were called, so Sammy was an object. And when I put a dot thing, I will be calling this as an attribute to Sammy. Okay, and I likewise I can call any of the attribute which is defined within the class, right? Because the keyword self was parameter of the methods as defined in shark class, the semi object gets passed to the methods. The self parameter ensures that method have a way of referring to object attributes. Okay, so I will repeat this line. So what it is saying? Because keyword self was a parameter of the methods as defined in the shark class, the semi object get gets passed to the methods. The self parameter ensures that methods have a way of referring to object attributes. So this was the problem which was happening. Okay, so what was the problem? If I don't give this self function now, these functions will not act as an attribute. You can think like that. Okay, as simple as that. So if you have to create an object, right? If you sorry if you have to create a class and you have to make it work like a object, always remember, in any of the functions you should be passing this self keyword. So again, this self keyword is a reserved keyword for Python. You should not be using it for some other purposes, and we will see the use case of this self even more in detail as we move along. But for now, you to remember is, if you want to make sure that these methods or functions can be used like this as an attribute, then you should be passing it. Because just now we saw, right? If I remove it from here and if I create it as an object, and if I try to run it, it gives me error. It says that, it takes zero positional argument, but one was given, right? So that's the reason, if I have to call it as a attribute, I will have to give self over here. So like you can think of like a hard rule or something, that otherwise it will not work. Okay, cool. Okay, so in here what we are doing is, we are simply creating a main function, right? And what that main function will do and how we can trigger that main function. So let me copy paste this entire thing and take you through one by one. Okay, so let me run this and then I'll tell you what it does. So सबसे पहले what you did, आपने you have defined this class. Okay, so this is as it is what we have done over here. So there is nothing new. Okay, so I created a class. Now I want to use that class. Okay, so to use that class, I created a function called main, right? So this main function, what it is doing, it is calling this class and creating as an object. Now in this object, I'm just simply calling these two attributes or these two methods. As simple as that. Clear? So till now also you should not have any problem. I simply created a class and then I simply created a function. Now all I'm doing is simply running that function. Okay, so if I run this function now, this main function again, I will get the same thing. Right. If I run this, you see, I get the same output. So all I'm doing is I'm just running the main function. The only thing which you have to remember over here is I have put a condition over here. Now, what is the condition? If this value name is equal to main, then you do it. Let's see if I do this, will it give me? Yes, it is. So now what is this name? You can think like, whatever is notebook or your Python script is currently running in your memory, right? In your system. So we learned about namespace thing, right? No matter whatever is the name of this notebook, for Python, it is this name of this notebook is main. That's all you have to remember. Okay, and that's why you see these line many of the times when you are actually going through a very complicated codes, but it is very simple. The meaning is very simple. If you are running this code, then execute this, as simple as that. So even if you don't, so what I'm trying to say is this will be always true. Okay, what is the name variable? This is the name variable of the current notebook, and whatever is the current running notebook is there, that name will always be main. Okay, I know it might have sounding confusing to you guys, but all you have to remember is, uh, जब भी आपको whenever you guys want to run any notebook, okay, or running any notebook or any script, what it is running in the memory, the name of that script is always this main. So actually if you see, your this condition is always gonna be true. Or but the why we put it over here is, whenever we are running this script or this cell, right? है ना? Whenever we are running or this is script or this cell, we want to execute this, that's all. Otherwise, we don't want to execute it. Okay, so this helps a lot when you have multiple scripts. Now you may see that it is redundant because obviously I am running this notebook, so I want to run these functions. So that is obvious, but it helps when you have multiple scripts. So multiple scripts, what happens is you don't know when that script is gonna run, right? So but I want to ensure those functions should only run whenever that script is called. Then only those functions should run. That's why you define these conditions. Clear? This line simply means you run whatever function is written at the within this if loop only when this particular script is running. That's all. Is this clear or any confusion? No confusion? I hope it's clear. Okay, cool. Then let's get moving. So that's what it says, right? Can you tell me what does name and main means? So let's see if we have more in detail. Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, even if I'll just repeat one more time. So what we are trying to do here is we define the class, whatever we want to execute. We define the main function, how we want to execute this class and use this classes, right? And simply when I said, uh, when I want to run this main function is simply whenever I'm running this notebook. So that's why I have given name of this notebook will always be main, and whenever it is equal to main, you run this. That's all. Okay, fine. Now coming to methods, right? Coming to those functions defining within the class. So there are two different kind of methods, bound and unbound method calls. Okay, so how do you call methods from an object? So there are two broad ways of doing it. Call the method from the instance or call the method from inside the class itself. Okay, according to there are two ways of calling methods, bound methods and unbound method calls. So let's see one by one what does it mean, right? So bound method we call instance call, the first one that we are calling from the instance. So to call the method, we must provide an instance object explicitly as the first argument. In other words, a bound method object is a kind of object that remembers the self instance and the referenced functions. Okay, so let's see if we have some more examples, then things will be clear. Okay, cool. So, fine. Yeah. So, as you can see here, we have defined this class. Now in this class, when I'm calling this object, right? So I am giving some values to this object. You can think like that, right? So this is a class I have defined. Now in this class, whenever I'm calling or creating an object of this class, I have given some value. It is not a blank class. Okay, and that's the major difference. So that if it is not a blank class, you have to give something. That is why we call it as a bound method call. Okay, because we are calling it from the outside the class, right? So let me go back and repeat this sentence again. So to call the method, we must provide an instance object explicitly. Okay, because we are calling that method, so we have okay, let me do one thing. Let me copy paste this simple line of code so that it is more clear over here. Let me put it here. Okay, yeah. So as I'm calling this method right here, I'm calling we must provide an instance object explicitly as the first argument. In other words, a bound method object. Okay, uh, a bound method object is a kind of object that remembers the self instance and the referenced functions. So a bound method may be called as a simple function without an instance later. Python automatically packages the instances with the function in the bound method object, so we don't need to pass an instance to call the method. In other words, when calling a bound method object, Python provide an instances for us automatically the instance used to create the bound method object. This means bound method objects are usually interchangeable with simple function object, makes them specifically useful for interfaces originally written for functions such as callback functions. So this is very much confusing. Okay, so let's go back to the example and try to understand it from there. Okay, so what does it say? I have simply created a class over here. Okay, so in this class, what did I do? I created two functions or two methods. The first method is the initialization method. So again, this is very important. Okay, so if you see the name again, this is we call it as initialization. So I am doing the initialization of the class. So that's where I give that what is the property of the class, right? What is the attribute of this class? Rather than attribute, I should use what is the property of the class. So if you remember, I gave you example, right? If you have to create a class of the fruit, you have to tell what is the property of this shape or what is the size, right? Similarly here, whenever you want to define a property of the class, you have to give define initialization. So this symbol or this letter is for initialization. Okay, so whenever you say initialization and you give self, which means that you are doing the initialization of the class. Okay, so self is very important over here. You have to give the self keyword, and then you can give any of the attribute or the property which you want to define. So let's say in this case we want to assign colors. So simply I have passed the color over here. Right now, how do I assign the color of the property? Simply I will say self is nothing but this class itself. Okay, self is matlab self क्या होता है? खुद, right? Self, what is the meaning of self? Ourselves, right? So that's what it's saying. Is class ka color, the color of this class is whatever you are passing it over here. So this is getting the property of this uh, class. Okay, so this is we called as initialization. So we did the initialization. Now there is another method which I have written called change color. Okay, so now in change color, again I'm passing the self thing, and what I'm doing is I'm simply printing what is the color. That's all. Okay, so I'm doing printing self dot color. So whatever is the property of this class color is there, I can see that. Okay, so here when we are giving the as giving the this thing, right, the calling this class and assigning the class, I have to give the color. So let's see, if I don't give the color. I think I already wrote this, hopefully. Yeah, so here I have already written it, right? So I have created this class callback. Okay, and here what I did, I simply created an object by giving a red color, right? So I have created an object. So now this object is created. Now I can simply call any the function. So I can call the functions. There is one thing, change color. So this is the method, and there is something called color also. So color is nothing but the property which we defined over here, right? So that's why you are seeing these two things over here. So if I do, let's say, change color, and I call this function, as you can see, it has printed the self color, right? Now what if I don't give anything over here? It gave me error. So that's how simple you can understand. If you remember here, I called it like that, right? I did not give anything. Reason why? Because I did not define any of the initialization over here. You see, I just simply defined the functions, which just take self. I did not give any other attribute. Whereas here, I clearly defined that you need this initialization thing. Okay, so that's why you have to have the basically have this arguments over here. So that's why we are calling this as a bound class. Okay, so bound methods or instance call, where we have to provide an instance object and we have to pass the argument. Clear? Let's learn the unbound method also, then I hope it will be more clear, then we'll repeat again. Okay, so now what is unbound method? Unbound method is accessing a function attributes of a class by qualifying the class, return, and unbound method object. So what does it mean? So I have created this class B, okay, and here I am just saying that it's an object. Now here I have defined two functions. Okay, so let me see if I have already done it. Yeah, so in here we are giving this object. Okay, in one method I have passed self first, and then in another I have not. So let me run this. Okay, now I have run this. Now let's see how can I call it. So I can simply call it as an object. So first of all, OB1, I call it as an object. And if I see what is OB1, it is this, right? It is like it is created an object. Now in this OB1, what I can do is, like, now in this, what we can do, accessing a function attribute of a class by qualifying the class returns an unbound method object. Okay. So what it is saying, if we do b dot first, okay, if I do second, will run. Okay. This. Actually, I was just trying to create the difference of the two so that things are clear. Now, let me explain. Okay. Yeah. So, the difference between the two methods are, right? So, so we understood what is the bound method, right? Now, what is unbound method is wherein we are not initializing anything, right? And we are actually, uh, we can actually call it from the class itself, right? So here, if you see, I have created an object, right? Now I could have, simply like we are doing, right? After creating this object, I can call these as a attributes, and I can simply run this, right? I can, you see here, it has run successfully over here, right? Simply, second also, if we do, you can run it, but here, okay, it takes, because of that self thing, it is not working. But let me give the self over here also. So see, it is running, right? Now the issue why it was giving error, just a second. So it can be anything. Okay. So what it did here is, um, yeah, so the difference between the two is, we have created an object over here, right? Now what you can do is, you can actually call this class, right, and call its functions, and you can pass this class itself as an object within this. You should be able to run this like this, okay, because this is an unbound method. However, if it is a bound method, if you try to do the same thing over here, it won't work. So if you see here, what I did, I simply call this callback class, and I call that function, and here still I have just passed as a this attribute, okay, basically this input, but it is not taking it like that. It is giving me error. Okay, so why it is giving error is simply यहाँ पर I have actually assigned that these are some of the inherent properties in the method, and for those property I have to give those attributes or those value at the first hand in the class. So that's why I'm calling that as a bound class. However, for unbound class there is no boundation, right? I can actually give the attribute at the run. I don't have to initialize anything at the prior level, and I can simply call this function as an object. Okay, so this is the major difference of the two. All right, so let's, what we'll do is let's try to move further, and then that time we will learn more further, more in detail about it. But for now, right, so I mean, see, these things are theoretical. Okay, let me say it very clear to you, these things are theoretical, but in practical thing, you, like, at least so far, I, in my knowledge, I have not explicitly used this is the unbound method and this is the bound method. Typically structure what we use of the class is, we define the class, right? We initialize some of the parameters, we define some of the methods, and that's it, we use it. We, nobody really cares if it is a bound method or an unbound method. It is just the theory perspective, it, these two things exist, and that's how you should be knowing. And a clear cut example or a clear cut difference of the two, what you can say is that in a bound method typically you will see all these initialization properties and all, for which you have to pass the arguments. However, for unbound methods, you will not be have to have the, you know, pass the arguments, because all these functions and things, they will be just having the self objects. Okay, right. So now let's understand more details about the class and also how do we really, you know, define it. So right, so now what is the attribute of an object, right? So as I said, right, whatever features you could think of can be the attributes of an object. So if the age of the thing, age of the person, color of the person, you know, the, their which citizenship they belong to, so all these things, you know, their height could be one of the properties. So whatever properties you want to define of a class, the all these things are nothing but an attributes. Okay, so initializing an attribute, so like we said, right, we have already used this function. So import meth, so from meth we call this function. So actually this was function, or you call it as attribute. Okay, so whenever we are calling this like this period symbol, we call it as attribute. So seal is an attribute for meth. Okay, so we have already used this method, right? So what we did here is we passed an attribute to a method, right? So CL was the method of math class, right? And we passed an attribute to a method. So whenever an object is to be created and we have to define some properties for it, we initialize these attribute by mean of that init method. So that's what I was telling you, right? Init means initialize. So whenever we have to define some properties, uh, then that time we can call this, and this is called as constructor method. Okay. So it is usually the first definition of the class. Okay, so if you have to initialize something, this has to be first definition or first method, then you can define any other things, right? So it looks something like this, that let's say if you are defining a shark class and if you want to initialize something, the one parameter has to have its self. तो self तो आपको pass कराना ही पड़ेगा, and apart from self you can pass other attributes whichever you want to define. Okay, and you can simply say, let's in this, this is a constructor method, so we are simply printing this out. Okay, now we want to assign name of the shark, right? Instead of saying the shark, we can assign, let's say JVero, whatever name you want, right? You can assign those in this. So how you can do it, you will give self and you will give that variable whatever you want to assign. So let's say if it is a name, you, it can be age, it can be breed, it can be color also, it can be anything. So you can just put comma and give whatever attributes you want to assign, and simply you say self dot name equal to name. So what you are doing over here is self refers for class, so class ka name is this. Similarly, class ka age is this, class ka color is this. So likewise, you are creating different objects of different properties. Okay. So I think we will be having examples. I'm just trying to see quickly where are the examples. Okay. Yeah, fine. So let's do this now. Let me show you examples of this, and then we can go along. Okay. So let me show you that example over here. Right. So let's say I have created a. I hope you guys are with me. Okay. Yeah. So I have created a class called Shark. Okay. And here I am giving name and I am giving age. Okay. And let's say I am assigning self dot name equal to name, right? And self dot age equal to age, right? So this is the property I have done, and now I am simply defining print name age function, and here I have to pass self, otherwise it will not know what is the name and everything. So I'm just doing print self dot name plus with comma, let's say I am printing self dot age. Okay, so that is the class I have created. Right now, how can I use this class? Simply I have created this. Now I can simply create an object, let's say object 1, that is shark, and in here I am passing name, let's say goldfish, and age is 1 year. Okay, now if I show you, one is this object, and if I have to, so if you see, it has printed this line, because whenever you call this class, this initialization will be run by default. Okay, this function will not run by default, because here also I've done printing, so you don't see that print command over here. But this is whenever whatever is there in the initialize, that will run by default as soon as you call this class. Okay, so this will run when I will call this. So when I will call this function, that time it will be run. Okay, so it is giving error self. Okay, so basically it is an integer, right? So that's why it is giving. So I will give it as str. So why it was giving error? Because it cannot concatenate. Because it cannot concatenate. This was a string and this was the age. So that was the problem. So I simply converted this integer into a string. So hopefully it should run. Yes, it has run, right? So now it has printed gold 1. So how we can use this class? Simply to create multiple objects. Now I can create an object 2 of same shark family. Let's say this time it is some other shark, right? It is, let's say, Blu-ray, or I don't know, maybe other kind of things, right? Which is, let's say, 5-year old. So I've created a different object, and simply I can call this function also whenever I want. Do you see? They likewise. So this is the purpose of classes. I can create multiple objects out of these classes, and only once I define this property. Now I cannot assign a object, or I cannot create an object without giving these two property. So agar मैं, even if I try, I cannot, and that is also again a important thing, because you can think like that, right? I don't want to store somebody's information without their phone number. It's a mandatory field, right? So that's the reason I have created a class जिसमें मैं बोल रही हूँ उस user का name, phone number and email ID, these three are mandatory field which I have assigned in property, and you cannot create an object without assigning that. Right. So that's why you have wondered, right? Why people ask for your phone number when you do the grocery shopping. Because they cannot create an object without that. Okay. So similarly, अगर मैं shark call करूँ and if I give just let's say some KK, I don't give age, it won't let me do that. It says one missing argument, that is age is missing. Clear? What? And I hope so. अगर ये चीज clear है, then I think we have done the job good so far. Even if you don't get clarity between bound and unbound, that's fine, let it be. But the main purpose of creating the class, how to create the class, how do we initialize, what is this self means, how are we giving the properties, and how we are giving the methods, how we are calling it, and how we are creating the object. आपको सिर्फ इतनी चीज समझ आई है ना ये 3 लाइन कोड में, इट्स मोर देन इनफ. इन चीजों में कुछ प्रॉब्लम है, आई विल टेक अ पॉज, यू गाइस कैन आस्क क्वेश्चंस. Okay, then we'll move forward. So if you guys have any questions in these things, कि हम कैसे define करते हैं classes को, what are properties, what are methods, uh, or what does initialization mean, those things you can ask me. Previous code, you mean this one, right? The same code or other one? Shark one code, right? Okay, fine. So I'll just explain again. So as you can see here, how we can create a class. Simply you say class and give the class name, whatever class you want to create. Then in that, uh, if you have to assign certain properties of that class, right? Like shark ke case mein, or let's take that bank employee case only. That in that case, if you want to create somebody's bank account, you there has to be have certain properties, right? Account name, account number, which bank that account is, right? Their address, PAN details. So all these are mandatory thing, right? Some of the properties which is mandatory to create an object. If you could think of such things, always define those things in the initialization method. So the first method is initialization. We call it as init method. And in here, the very first argument you should be passing itself by default. Then you can pass all the attributes which you want to define. Okay, this will be run without, even if you are not calling any other function. So as soon as you call this class, this function will run by default, because this is the initialization method. As the name suggests, right? It initializes your class. Okay, so as soon as it initializes, what you are doing, you are saying what is my class name, I mean, what is that object name actually of that class? What is the age of that object? So likewise, you are defining your property of the object. And then you can define any of the other methods or functions, whatever you want to do with that property. Okay? So that's how you define classes and functions and attributes within that. Now, once you have defined this class, how do I use it? To create multiple objects out of it. And how can I do it? Simply like this. I created one object with the different attributes, gold one like that, right? Similarly, O2 I created, blue, vibe and all. So अगर मेरे पास इसमें 5 or 10 other methods होते, I could have used it. So if you are wondering why did I need a class rather than a function, because in one class I have assigned multiple functions together and put it in one thing. So it is solving two purpose. So why we call class, right? Because it has certain attributes. So I am making sure that my all and every object is same. अगर मैं बोल रही हूँ इस केस में मेरा O1 है, O2 है, तो I know they are same in terms of class. They both belong to shark class. I know they both have their name, age, and whatever attributes I have defined. So they are same in that sense. Yet they are two different objects. Okay, so it's like a class of human. We know that we all have two hands, two things. So think like that, right? What was the need of somebody's creating different classes? कि हम लोग humans हैं, बाकी लोग birds हैं, बाकी लोग animals हैं. What was the need, right? So the same way you can think of here also. You have these classes to distinguish between two different kind of functions which you are doing, right? Similarly, you can assign multiple functions in this one single class, and you can simply call from this object. So now you have created an object. You अगर यहाँ पे और भी 5 other functions होते, you could have called it by simple this method. So that's how easy it becomes. Okay. So fine. So with that, let's move further. So I hope now this initialization thing, we call it as constructor method, is also clear to you. Okay, so then instead of so now there are other attributes also. Okay, so what you can do is you can as soon as, let's say, you have created an object, right? Let's say you want to see what all different attributes are there in that. So you can do it with get attribute. You can give the object, right? And you can then give the name and default and everything. So let's see if we just try to give get attribute, what happens. So get attribute, if I do O1, will it do? No, it's at least 2 arguments. Okay, what is the second argument? It says name. Name is not defined. Just a second. Let me do this. Has attribute object name. Oh my goodness, I think it's like, do I have to give it like that? True. Okay, I have to give it like that in quotes. Sorry, I forgot. Okay, so it is saying has attribute. So I could have, right? So likewise, you can check. If let's say if I give something else, some other name, it will say false, that it does not have attribute. Okay, because it knows that I have two attributes, name and age. Simply, I can check with age also. So yes, it says you have attributes, right? So likewise, you can check if you have attribute or not, if your attribute exists or not. If you want to access the attribute, then that's how you can do it. Name and then default. If you want to set attribute, you can do it this way also. If let's say attribute does not exist, then you could have set attribute like this. So for example, I want to set attribute in O1, let's say color is not there. So I can say what is the attribute I want to assign, and I can give the value, let's say green. So I think it's done. So if I do O1 and if I say press dot, so now I can see age, color and name also. So color also I can see, right? But if I check in O2, it won't exist because I have created only in O1. So in O2 still I have only name and age only. Okay, so this is something like, let's say you created an object, but still in few of the objects there are certain, they have extra attributes than other. So likewise you can create. So you have has attribute to check, get attribute to get what is the value, set attribute to set a new value, new attribute. Then you have delete attribute also. You can delete an attribute also by giving the name simply. Okay, so these things you can do within the attribute of an object. Right. So create an object, let's say Jai of type shark. The shark should have a name attribute name. Value should be Jai. Using the above function, find out if name attributes exist. What is the value of the attribute and the rename value to Viru. So this is some exercise which we can try out, right? So simply what you can do is we have already created this shark. We already have that name attribute, right? In the initialization method, all you have to do is create an object where your name is this. Okay. Then once you do that, you can check whether it has attribute name or not, right? And if yes, then what is the value, right? And then you can rename the value using set attribute. Okay. Clear? Fine. Then we have built-in class attributes. Every Python class keep following built-in attributes, and they can be accessed using dot operator like any other attributes. So what are some by default built-in attributes? So right, these are dictionary, doc, name, module, and basis. So let's see how we can access it. So they are saying this is the class, right? So let's see. If I do shark, if I press dot, so if I press tab, I should be able to see all these things according to this. But it says dictionary contains. So let's see if I do this, am I able to? Oh yeah, so it worked like that. So you just have to shark dot give those attribute. So name is there, then you have dictionary. Let's see what dictionary does. So it gives you dictionary of all these things. So whatever is existing, right? So you have the initialization function, you had the module main, then you have print name match function, then you have dictionary of shark object, you have doc none, you have weak ref, all these things. So all these things nothing but attributes of a class. So you can check all these attributes of the class. Okay. So dictionary containing the classes namespace. So in dictionary, if you see, it has the class, it is just one single name, right? So it has the name of the class, that is shark. Then you have doc, class documentation, string or none. So in this case, it is none. So typically what we do is in classes, right, we create a doc string. So what is doc string? So you put three cursor. So I have already told you to, if you want to create multiple line comments, right? So that time you give these three quotes. So if you type whatever, right? So what this class does. So you can talk about it. तो बेसिकली व्हाई यू क्रिएटेड दिस, राइट? सो दीज आर नथिंग बट कमेंट्स कि आपने ये क्लास बनाया और ये फंक्शन क्रिएट किया, व्हाई यू डिड दैट, व्हाट वाज द पर्पस. सो यू कैन राइट अबाउट इट दैट व्हाट दिस क्लास डू, व्हाट दिस फंक्शन डू, व्हाट वाज द नीड ऑफ इट. So you can, so this is for human to read. Okay, but you can save it like this. So if I save it like this and I run it, it will come here. So you see now the doc, earlier it was none, now it has this, what this class does. So now it has this thing. So basically it is all these things are the properties of this class. Okay. So that's how you can read about it, that if you really want to know what is that class about, so all these things you can do. Okay, what are the initialization thing? So basically it will tell you all these three are the important or mandatory field to create an object for this class, right? So all these things you can learn about the class. Okay. Fine. So we will, I will, this, right? I will check this after some time. Let me just complete this. Yeah, let me just complete this. Then I will come back to your questions. Okay. So these are all about the classes, how you can check about it. Then class variables are defined within the class doc construction. Okay. Because they are owned by the class itself. So class construction matlab jo initialization method tha, right? So that initialization method only we defined all these class variables. Because they are owned by the class itself, class variables are shared by all the instances of the class. They therefore will generally have the same value for every instance unless you are using the class variable to initialize the variable. Okay. So defined outside of all the methods, class variable by convention typically placed right below the class header and before this the other method. Okay. So let's see with examples all these things, right? So in here, let's see what we are trying to do. Okay. So let me copy paste this simple thing. Okay. Let's take this example and then we'll come back to your queries. So यहाँ पर I have defined this class, right? So I think it's not formatted. That's why it is giving error. Uh, so basically this define function will come here. Then you have print. Then basically, yeah. So self name. Then you have this define swim self. So it has to be going in. Then yeah, I think it should run. Yes, it has run successfully. So this is the class I have defined. Now I want to run this function. So let's see what happens. Okay. So class में just to walk you through. So we are defined some print. I mean, no, it's not a print command just for us. Some code welcome to this base class for Shark object. We initialize the only the name thing. Then we have two functions, swim and be awesome. Okay. Simple. I run this class. Then I have created a main function in which I have first created a shark object for J. So this J I am calling swim and all these functions. And then I have created a second object Viru, and then I have created call these two functions. Let's see what all things we can do. Okay. Then I will simply call this main function. Yep. So you see what happened, right? So I first uh, call this main function. So what it did, सबसे पहले this line was run. So as soon as this line was run, this is a shark class it called. So when it called the shark class, as I told, right, these two will not be done because these are not printing. This is for us only for reading. Okay. So that's why you don't see these lines over here. The very first line you see, this is constructor method. And why? Because I told you, as soon as you call this class, your initialization method will be run first. So it triggered this initialization method, which means that it has to print this line. So it printed this. Then it defined the name. So it defined the name, that is J. Okay. So it is done. This line output is only this. That's all. Okay. Then what happened? I called J swim. Correct. So now J swim is what? In of this object, this is the swim. So which means that I have to print this line. So what is this line? The shark is swimming. Then whenever there is this percentage symbol, right, which means that instead of this, this name will come. So that's the formatting, string formatting we do, right? So I'm not sure if I have already told you, but if not, then I'll repeat again. So simply, instead of just if you really want to print some variable name over here, what you can do is just put a percentage symbol, give a variable s, and the same percentage symbol here, and what name you want to print. Okay. So self dot name is what? J. So it will come like the shark J is swimming. And that's what you are seeing here. The shark J is swimming. Okay. Then you called be awesome method. Again, then be awesome method will be called. Same thing. The shark J is being awesome. So that's what you are seeing here. The shark J is being awesome. Okay. Then what you did? You did the same thing with Viru. So same steps are repeated. First of all, as you initialize, this line will be run. Then all these two lines are repeated with Viru. Okay. Then you printed all these stuff. So what did you printed? You printed first Sharka doc. So doc string is that welcome to base class, right? So this is the doc string. Then you have, if it would have been a multiple line, you could have given three quotes. So now here is just one double quote, right? Instead, you could have given three single quotes like I did over here. Okay, so that's the doc string. What is the shark name? Is shark. Module is main, right? And basis you have object, right? All these things are dictionary. Okay, so likewise, you can create a class and use and create a objects. Okay, fine. Now let's go back to your queries and then we'll proceed further. Okay, so what is the first query? So Deepak says that this class you are getting error. Let me copy. I'm not sure about the formatting, but let me try. Uh, so I'm just copy pasting. So it did not throw error. I just simply copy pasted for me and ran it. So maybe you can check what was the error, and that error if you copy paste that would be helpful. Okay, Deepak. So if you can paste the error, that would be helpful. We can drill down to that because as I copy pasted, simply it ran for me. So you might be getting some missing module or missing package error. Hopefully, that might be the problem. Okay, then what Johnson is saying, set attribute don't modify the class, just modifies instance. Yes, set attribute is only for the object, not for the class. Would that mean that how we could uh, implement specialization and inheritance? So if we are talking about class inheritance, we will cover that later. We will not discuss about that now because others will not be able to understand, right? So we will talk about class inheritance in some time now. But to answer your question short, set attribute is only for changing the property of an object, not the class. Okay. Okay. Any other question or queries? No? So then let's do one thing. Let's take a quick break of 10 minutes. We'll come back to around 12:40. Okay. And meanwhile, Deepak, if you have, like, if you can paste the exact error or its screenshot, that would be helpful. Then we can look into that. Otherwise, we'll move further. So then there are a few more things which are pending about class inheritance and all. So we will cover that. Okay. Cool. Hello. Yep. So I hope everybody is back from the break. So let's get started. Okay. I hope my screen is visible. Okay. So let's quickly go through one more example of that detailed example of the same class shark, right? So here, as you can see, I have assigned the class named shark, and we can assign the variable class variables at the top. So we have assigned class variable like animal type or location. Okay, so these are the class variable which will be applicable throughout this class. Okay, so you can these will act like a global variable within this class. Okay, so then you can initialize it, right, the constructor by name and age, and then maybe you can define some function also, like set followers or something, right? So now once you do that, I have defined the main function in which I'm simply giving uh, calling a shark object where I'm giving the name and age, because now I have to give these two things as mandatory, otherwise it will give error. So I have done that. Then I'm calling simply name of this, because the attribute of this will be name, age, and this function. Okay, so I'm simply calling it a name, and then also calling the location also. Okay, this location is something which is the class variable. I have not initialized it. So basically what you can think of is, I cannot change these variables, class variables, right? I can only change variables over here. So this is something which is predefined, which is same for all the object. You can think like that. Okay, so that is the location. Similarly, I created a second object which is Steve. So it's name. And then here I gave a set follower, and in set followers, actually I had variables. Okay. Some variable I had to pass. So that I have done. And simply, I'm simply running this function. So let's see what happened. So as soon as I run it, I see all these outputs. So what it is saying, it is first printing the semi name. So it's semi. Then it is printing the location, right? So that is ocean. So if you will print, so let me run that, and let me in fact show you the location for Steve, right? So location for Steve will also remain same. So if I press tab, okay, so Steve is okay. I ran it as a function, right? So whenever you run something in a function, I will not be seeing the semi outside. Okay, so the semi I can see, but because I defined earlier, but Steve I will not be seeing outside, because I run within the function. So it does not exist outside. So if I have to use it, I will have to run this again outside the function. So let me run this outside the function. Now it exists. So if I print the location of this, as you can see, it will be ocean, because these class variable will remain constant throughout all the objects. Okay. So if I show you what all things available here, I can see animal type, location, set forwards. Okay. Cool. I could have seen the name also. So name is also there. So sometimes not full list come, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that just because it is not showing there, it is not there. So sometimes it doesn't show you the full thing. It is just a glitch you can think of in Python or Jupyter Notebook, but that is fine. It doesn't mean that it's not available. You can simply put the attributes and see. It will show you if it is available. Otherwise, it will give you error that this attribute does not exist. Okay. So I hope now things are clear. If I ask you, can you create a class? Can you create a class with so and so attributes, which you can be changed, or with the so and so attributes which should not be changed, and with all these methods? I hope by now you should be able to do it. Okay. So with that, let's move on to the different top. I mean, the same class topic. So somebody was talking about inheritance, class inheritance, right? So what exactly does that mean? So as the name suggests, inheritance, like मतलब heredity जैसे अपना चलता है. So there is a family of classes, right? So there will be a parent class, then there will be multiple child class. So we can pass one class into the another, provided we have to say which one is the parent class, which is the child class, right? So what does it do? So inheritance is when a class uses code constructed within another class If we think of inheritance in terms of biology, we can think of a child inheriting certain traits from their parent, right? So let's say whatever attributes I have defined in a parent class, by default that will be passed to a child class. Okay, so different kind of objects often have a certain amount in common with each other, right? Like mountain bikes, road bikes, tandem bikes, for example. So what I can do is I can create a all share the characteristics of bicycle, right? Like current, speed, pedal, gears and all. Yet each also defines additional feature that makes them different. Like tandem bicycle has two seats and two set of handlebars. Road bikes have drop handlebars. Some mountain bike have like that, right? So you could have created a parent class with speed, pedals, cadence and gear attributes defining in a parent class. Then you could have different child classes of mountain bikes, road bikes, or tandem bikes with all other attributes. So that is the kind of a use case is there for classes. Similarly, in shark example also, right? Shark could be one parent class, just making you have name and age and color. Then you could have other different classes, right? Different classes of shark also, because shark also has different kind of things. You have ray also being called shark. You have some long spouted shark, long snouted shark. You have some other families as well, right? So likewise, you can create different classes of a big parent class. So what this parent class does? So parent or a base class creates a pattern out of which child or subclasses can be based on. Parent classes allows us to create child classes through inheritance without having to write the same code over and over again. Right? Similarly, जैसे मतलब what is the purpose again? Same thing. अगर आप कुछ attributes मेरे सारी classes में same है, simply you can create a parent class with that attribute, right? And you can pass that variable instead of defining those 4 or 5 attribute same time in all 5 or 10 different classes, isn't it? So any class can be made into a parent class so that they are fully functional classes in their own right rather than just templates. Okay, so let's say we have a general bank account parent class that has personal account, business account, child classes. Okay, so many of the methods between personal and business accounts will be similar, right? Like आपको deposit करना है, withdraw करना है, transfer करना है, all these functions and attributes will be same whether it is your personal account or it is in a business account. So tell me one thing, does it make sense you write all these functions over and over again between these two different classes? No, right? You could have create a bank account class that is your parent class, and you can simply define that personal account and business account are the child class of bank account class. So you will inherit automatically all those methods and properties. Clear? I hope this is clear now that why do we need parent and child classes. Okay, similarly, animals having eating, sleeping method like that could be a part of parent class rather than child classes. Okay, so now let's say we create a fish parent class, right, which we will later use you make it subclasses. So each of fish will have first name and last name in addition to their characteristics, right? So we will create a new file and start with initialization constructor, which we will populate the first and last name. Okay, so let's look at this example. So as you can see here, I have created this parent class called fish, right? And here I have defined in this initialization method two important things, right? So self will be there, then first name, what is the first name and the last name. Okay, and then I can simply save that first and last name to the property. So this is how I have defined the fish class. Correct? Now, since most of the fish we will be creating are considered to be bony fish as they have skeleton and other thing. So what we can do is we can add few more attributes to this. So let's add few more attributes also, since apart from self first name and last name, they have added skeleton, eyelids also. So all these attributes are part of the parent class, right? So these are the variables, and then you have two different functions, swimming and swim backwards. Okay, so these are the two methods and these attributes which are part of a parent class. Okay, now let's see how we can create a child class for this. So what are child class? So child or subclasses are classes that will inherit from the parent class. Okay, so just a check that you am audible and you guys are seeing right. Okay, so child classes are they will inherit automatically all of these things from the parent class. This means that each child class will be able to make use of methods and variables of the parent class. Okay, so for example, let's say I want to create a child class that is goldfish. Okay, so in class that subclasses the fish class will be able to make use of swim method declared in the fish without needing to declare it, right? So how can I define that is what is a which one is a parent class and child class? Simply like this. So whatever is your class, that is your child class, in this case goldfish, you can pass your class name, parent class name within that class. So by default, it will be like your goldfish is your child class and fish is your parent class. Okay, I will repeat again. Whatever is your parent class, you first define your parent class. So for parent class, you don't have to pass anything. It is simply class and class name, whatever is your parent class name. Okay, but for your child class, you have to put a parenthesis and pass your parent class name in within that, so that it knows fish is the parent class and goldfish is a child class. तो इसके अंदर क्या होगा, you can use any of the property of the fish within the goldfish class. Okay, so we can think of each child class being a class of a parent class. That is, if we have a child class called rhombus and a parent class called parallelogram, we can say that rhombus is a parallelogram just as a goldfish is a fish. Okay, so of course, like we can say, right, child will inherit all the property of the parent, but it is not vice versa. Parent may not inherit all the property of the child. So let's say if you are assigning any extra variable in goldfish, you it will not be happening that fish will have all those attributes. No. Only attributes defined in the parent class, that is fish, will be there in the goldfish. It's not vice versa. Okay. So first line of the child class looks at a little different than non-child classes, as you must pass the parent class into the child class as a parameter. So as you can see this line, right? So you have to pass parent class into child class as a parameter so that it knows fish is the parent of goldfish class. Okay. Now let's see how we can use it. So as you can see here, I have defined a fish over here and I can use all the functions whatever I have defined of fish. Okay, so let me show you with the example. So what I did here is, let me copy paste everything. Right, so yeah, I have defined this parent class, right? So let me run this. Now I will simply define a child class, that is goldfish. And let's say I am not doing anything in this child class. So that's why I have written pass. Okay, I could have done something else also, but let for now, let's say I'm not doing any, or let's say let us do something. Let me show you some example. Uh, so let's say here I am assigning a name called uh, let's say uh, what else? Fin. Let's say fin size I have given. Okay, something called fin size, which is a property of goldfish. Okay, so now what I can do is self dot fin size equal to fin size. So this extra property I have defined of goldfish. Okay, so I have defined this class. Now what I can do is simply I can create an object out of this. So what I can say is, let's say I have created an object called n e and then I'm calling goldfish class. Now in this I have to give the attribute. Okay, so let's say I am giving a attribute called uh, name. So name I have to give, because as you can see here, other variables I have already defined. So we already know, right? This is there was a name for it yesterday we learned, right? This is declared variable. We are already assigning these variable. So these are not mandatory to give. But first name is mandatory to give. So I have to give the first name. So let's say first name I'm giving Nemo. Will it run? Let's try running. So it ran. Okay, let's see what is any. So it has run and it has what all things are there. So it has fin size also. So what if I do fin? Okay. So, okay. So because fin size, it has taken Nemo, which is actually wrong. But okay. So what I was trying to say is it uh, okay, first thing first. So even though let's say I did not define anything within the goldfish apart from this fin size, it has already inherited all these swim functions and all, right? So if I run this swim, you can run that fish is swimming, right? So I you can also use this swim backwards. So all these functions are available to you this object, simply because you have passed this fish class as a parent class over here. Okay, you can check eyelets will also be here, even though it is not coming, but it's there. Eyelets. No attributes. Why? Just a second, I will do this. Okay, let me try one thing. Let me see if I just commented and I will just do pass. Will it work? Okay, yeah, it worked. Okay, so we will come back to this how to access the variable if I want to pass something in this, right? Or I think it won't work. That's my guess. But what happened is, I'll repeat again for you guys what happened. Okay, so if I defined so earlier I defined something over here, right? So I was not able to access all these variables which were there part of the parent class. It was giving error that it does not exist. But as soon as I commented this initialization section over here, right? So what happened is, now I am able to access all the things, and that is what I wanted, right? I wanted to use all the functions and variables which I have defined in the parent class, right? So let's say in the parent class, I already had this last name. So you can see here, here I defined as a fish, so I can see access over here. Similarly, I can see what is the skeleton. So all these things, now it is visible. Earlier it was not, but now it is visible. So if it is a skeleton, I can call that it's bone. So likewise, so first thing first, now we saw that how you can define the properties in the fish in the parent class, and then the same thing how you can access using the child classes. So that's what we saw over here. Now the question comes, what if I have to add additional properties in the child class, then how do I access both of them? So we will see that later. Okay, so we'll come back to that. But for now, what we learned is typically you defined all the properties and function in your parent class. Then you can use it through your child class by simply passing that parent class in as a parameter. So with child classes, you can choose to add more methods, override existing parent methods, or simply accept the default parent methods with the pass keyword, which we do have done in this case. Let's try to create another fish, clownfish, which has some of its own method. So let's say in this clownfish, we have created another method called live with anima. Okay, so here you have created this method. Now again, what you can do is, you now in this Nemo fish, if you call it, it will have previous method swim backwards along with this anemo method also. Okay, because you have added this in the clownfish. So adding method is doable, right? So that you can do, right? So that you can do without any problem. So as you can see, clownfish, jazzy, as you assigned. So here you are able to use this new method also. Okay, so that is what you can do, and it will overwrite also. So what do you mean by overwrite? If you use the same function name what you have used in the parent, uh, your whatever is the latest in your child class, that only it will work. So far we have looked that, at the child class goldfish that made use of the pass keyword to inherit all of the parent class fish behavior, and another child clownfish that inherited all of the parent class behavior and also created its own unique method that is specific to this class only. Sometimes, however, we will want to make use of some of the parent class behavior, but not all of them. So you can actually override them. So how can I override? So when constructing parent and child classes, it is important to keep program design in mind so that overriding does not produce unnecessary or redundant code. So we will create a shark child class of fish parent class, because we have created the fish class with the idea that would be creating the primary bony fish. We will have to make some adjustment for the shark class, that is instead some other kind of a fish. In terms of this, if we had more than one non-bony fish, we would most likely want to make separate classes for each of these two type of fish. Okay, so let's see how we can do it. So in light of this, we will be overwriting the initialization constructor method and the swim backward method. We don't need to modify the swim method and do all these things. Okay. So what happens is, why it was not working, right? So what it does is, as soon as you initialize this method again, so you are overriding the initialize method of the parent class, and that's why it was not working. Okay, so let me repeat it again. So what happened is, in this case, when you were passing the pass function over here, right? So what you are saying is, you are simply accepting whatever is there in the fish class. Okay, so as soon as you done that, you can see, you can access all these variable names and everything, right? But what was happening is, when I did not simply accepted everything and I did this, and I'll do this again. So according to this, okay, let me not give anything. Okay, so according to this, you see it says only one positional argument is missing, right? So that is fin size. It does not say that first name is also missing, because I have simply overwritten with this initialization method, right? So if I have to use all these things, extra, I mean, all these things also in this class, so either I have to define all these values along with this new class over here. Okay, otherwise it will not take, because this is simply overriding this initialization method, because that's what we saw, right? For this class there should be only one initialization method, isn't it? So because the name is same, it has simply overwritten this initialization method with this. Similarly, if you define some other functions also, na, let's say if I define swim, right, and let's say I do print, then this is overridden, overrid, let's say. Okay, so if I do that, okay, now let me give some name, right? And now if I do any dot swim function, it has simply overridden, because here also I had swim function, but this was old because this was run later. So whatever is there in the child, that would be most relevant if you have the same name. That's all you have to remember. Okay, so if you want to use all these properties, so one thing is, don't initialize anything over here, or if you want to add something, then use these parameters also. Okay, Cool. Any confusion in this parent and child? What inherited what, or what is the sequence? Let's take a 2-minute break and see if you guys have any questions. Yes, swim backward will remain. So if I do here, right, any dot, because you can see it will say swim backward will remain. So that you can use. Only overridden I'm talking about. If you are going to use the same function name, then it will override. So this function will still be there. Okay. Any other question? No? Fine. So yeah, so as we saw, right, overriding parent method, simply you can initialize with this method. So all the attributes will be overwritten or the functions will be overwritten. Okay. There is something called super function. With the super function, you can gain access to inherited methods that have been overridden in a class object. So when we use super function, we are calling a parent method into a child method to make use of it. For example, we may want to override one aspect of a parent method with certain functionality, but then call the rest of the original parent method to finish the method. Let's see what does it do. Okay. Or how do we use it? Then I think it will be more clear. So with the super function, you can gain access to inherited methods that have been overwritten in a class object. Okay. So rest of the attributes that were supposed to be part of parent class now automatically comes into child class as a part of inheritance. So let's see with example, then I think it will be more clear. Okay. So fine. So you define super in itself. Mhm. Fish. Okay. So in this super function, how we can use it? In a program that grades a student, we may want to have a child class, right? For weighted grade, then inheritance. Okay, so this is some other example. Is most commonly used within init method because this is where you will most likely need to add some uniqueness to the child class and then complete the initialization. So what we have done here is this. Okay, so let's see what happens if I add it over here. Mhm. Mhm. So just give me a moment. I'm just trying to find a right example so that things are more clear for you guys. So let's do one thing. Let's simply copy paste this and see how it is working. Okay. So let me do one thing. I have done that. So simply I can do this super init save. Let's see how it is changing it. Right. So I have defined this. Now if I do any dot, okay, any dot first name. Okay, yeah. So let me, yes, I think it's done. So let me show you. Fine. So this was a fish class, right? So now, so far what we saw is this is the fish class and this is the child class which I have created. In this, I have assigned the fin size, right? So now in this fin size, I have also overwritten this function swim. So now if I do this, this is overwritten. And if I see the different properties, right, of this object, as I press the tab symbol, so as you can see in the attributes, there is only fin size, right? There is all these names are not there, correct? Because just now I show you, right? Because it has overwritten this. So now what they are saying is, because if I do, let's say last name in this case, right? Let me do this last name. It will give me error that goldfish object has no attribute to as a last name. Okay. So now what they are saying is, instead of copy pasting all these things again and again in multiple thing, right? Then what is the solution? Then this is not the solution, right? Let's say if I want to add something in the goldfish, I should not be copy pasting all these attribute. There has to be some other way. So that's what they are telling. There is some other way that is super. Okay, so what you can do is you can copy paste this line in your child class. So what it is telling is super, and then this initialization method, and you just say self. So what it did, use as I simply ran it. Now if I just create this object again, now as you can see here, if I hit enter now, you see now all these things are coming up. If I see skeleton, it is there. If I check that last name, it is there. So what it simply did, it added along with this. So it says that it is not, it you can think like it is not a overwritten, it's just that it's like a addition. So it is just telling that you don't overwrite whatever you are getting from the parent class. That's all. So that's all it is meant. This super in itself, if you add, it's just telling that you don't have to overwrite. So simply if I do the fin size, it has this property also. Okay, clear? So only thing, I'll just consolidate again. If you want to make use of these attributes also, you don't want to override, yet you want to add something, you just define new parameters over here, just add this super line so that you are appending into the previous attributes only. Clear? Okay. So let's look at the one more example, right? So that's what it is saying. So whatever is your child thing is here, you can just define this. Super function is most commonly used within this init method because this is where you will most likely need to add some uniqueness to the child class, right? Because let's say if you want to add some attributes, then that is not the way that previous attributes will be gone, right? So the complete initialization from the parents. So we have overwritten the initialization method in the trout child class, providing a different implementation of this that is already defined by the parent class fish. So within this initialization method of our trout class, we have explicitly invoked this method of the first class. So when I have written this line, what it is doing is you don't have to start from scratch. You just have to start from the initialization method from your parent class. So that is just like a appending into the parent class attributes, not overwriting. Okay. So because we have overridden method, we no longer need to pass first name in as a parameter to trout. And if we did pass in a parameter, we would reset freshwater instead. We will therefore initialize the first name by calling the variable in our object instance. So what does it mean? Um, let's say, let's take another example. So now we can invoke the initialized variable of a parent uh, class and also make use of the unique child variable. Let's refer this example. So here what I'm doing is I have actually given one name. So there was one name. That's why I have given name here. Otherwise, you could have given self also. So in this case also, you can actually initialize with the two names, right? Because first is the locker, and then there is the name. So that's what you have defined here, and that's how you can check it out. So let's do one thing. Let's quickly put it over here and try to run this again. Right. I will have to do this step. Okay, so this is a parent class called account. This Mickey I have initialized with a name. Then I have a second child class that is locker and which takes parent class as account. Then here I have defined two names that is locker and name. Okay, so here name we are initializing, but this name I am not giving anything new. I am just saying that you have to overwrite it from the account from the previous ones. So that is just for to give the name uh, 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 one because what will happen otherwise how will you give, because in this case if you see I needed first name also now in this case, then how can I give the first name, because here I have just given one variable. So let's try giving now. If I give another variable called name, it will give error that it takes 0 argument but 3 were given because one was self, so that's why it is counting. So ideally it just needed one only. Even though I say that okay, this is fin size and this is name, it will give me error. Okay, unexpected. So see first name, if I give here, it will give me error. It says that first name is an unexpected argument. So in this case, the problem was, even though I'm not overwriting, but how do I give argument to or a value of this argument, right? It's something I have not defined. So that is what is solved here. So what you can do is here you have to ask that you have to give name also, right? And then here you don't have to say specifically that self dot name is blah blah this. You can just say that this will be coming from the parent class. So this way what will happen is as soon as you run this and as soon as I'm creating an object, let's say a equal to locker, right? So it knows that first you have to give the value of locker and then you have to give the name. So value of locker, let's say whatever 100, or name is name one. So if you do that, right, and you do the a, let's run this, and if you see what all different attributes are there, so locker and name both are there. So if you do locker, you got 100. If you get name, you have n1. Okay, so very simple thing, just an addition of it, that if you have to give some value of the parent class argument, therefore that's why in this initialization method, this at least you have to do. So here you have to give that this take this argument, right? Because this is logical also. If you don't give anything over here, how will this know that it will take two arguments? Because that's what happening here now. Here I defined that it will just take one argument, that is fin size. And that's the reason when I was trying to give more, it was giving me error that it is unexpected. So here you have to mention that this is what expected, right? So I will just consolidate again, right? So what we did is, first of all, if you are defining anything in your parent class and if you are initializing it again in your child class, this will be overwritten. Okay, in order to avoid overwritten, what you can do is you can simply say super dot init self, right? Now what will happen is in this case, you can use your previous variables like parent variables, but which is predefined, like in this case. But let's say if you want to change input of this, how you can do that? For that, you have to pass here also all those variables, taki you can give all these arguments. And then here you can give the name that you will have to take it. So let's say if you have age also here and you are giving that number by default and you are giving self dot age equal to age. Okay, so in this case if you see, you don't have to give the age variable over here, but still it will be reflecting because that was already predefined and it is not overwritten because you have already put super over here. It is only for the variable which you want to give, so that these variable you have to assign here. So let's see if let's say if there are multiple things, let's say bank also, which is not there. So self dot bank equal to bank, And I think here name and then bank, if I will write, I'm not sure, I'm just trying it out. Let's see. So it will give error that I have to give bank. Yes. So let me give B1. So, but it gave error because here I just gave a name. So I think here also I have to give bank also. Yes. So now it has worked. So you see A dot bank. If I do, it will give me bank B1. Clear? Understood what I did? So you can pass multiple arguments for which multiple values you have to give. You just have to mention it clearly that those values are coming from your initialization method. That's all. Okay. Any confusion in here? Any kind of confusion or questions? No confusion? All good? आपको समझ आ गया कि क्लास कैसे डिफाइन करते हैं, पेरेंट क्लास कैसे डिफाइन करते हैं. सो फॉर नाउ यू नो हाउ टू डिफाइन पेरेंट क्लास, how to define child class, what are the different attributes, what are the methods, how do I call method, and how do I create object, how do I make sure that I am inheriting certain things from parent class, and I am wherever I want to override I can do that, wherever I don't want to override, how to stop overwriting. ये चीज समझ आ गया. ट्रस्ट मी, यू हैव यू नो व्हाट एक्सेल द डेटा क्लासेस एंड ऑल. इससे ज्यादा और कुछ नहीं आता. आई मीन कुछ नहीं आता एज इन nothing more much will be used apart from all these things. So if you know this, you already know many things which, trust me, lot of people who are working in industry doesn't know. Even when I started with this, I had zero knowledge about classes and how to create those and everything. So I learned also on job. When I had to create some classes, that time only I learned. So it's, see, all these things are not like you cannot work until unless you don't know these things. You can work, but your work will not be clean, right? Because you will not be able to write a clean or tidy code. You can create function, right? All the thing you will be doing is you might be writing it multiple times because you don't know classes and function exist where you can just create a dictionary or create all these beautiful kind of structure which you can leverage in a organized fashion, isn't it? So once you know about it, then you will eventually start using it. Okay. And trust me, that is the maximum use case what anybody does. If I'm talking about even more than medium level, of course not talking about advanced people, but more, I mean, basic to moderate people, these are the basic knowledge, I mean, of the classes is sufficient enough. Okay, so if you know all these things, you are like, you can call yourself pro in creating the class and understanding it at least, right? So with that, let's move further quickly. So let's see what all different things are there, right? So multiple inheritance. Okay, again, I mean, this is also very simple concept. So in this, what we are saying is, it can happen, right? That your child class have multiple parents, right? So you have both two parents, father and mother. Same thing here also can happen, right? Multiple inheritances can happen. So let's say I want to use some of the property of the some other class and some other property of the some other class. So I can actually call multiple parents in same class. How can I do it? Simply put a comma and call two classes. Right. So let's say I have created a class Coral, which has a community function. Then I have another class, an emo one, which has this protect clownfish function. And this is my child class, Coral Leaf, in which I have first parent as Coral and second parent as Anemo one. So with that, if I call it, I can simply use community function also and protect clownfish function also. As simple as that. Okay. So you can pass multiple parent classes in one class and leverage both the functions. Okay. So then there are these functions which you can check, is subclass, matlab ki, whether it is a subclass or a parent class, or is instance function to check a relationship of two classes, right? So for example, let's try this out, right? It's subclass, what does it give? So in here, I have already defined local and account, right? So if I give sub is subclass, that is local, that is child class, right? Locker, and sub is parent, super. So that is account. So let's see. Is subclass? Yes, it is true. Locker is subclass of account, true. If I do other way around, it will be false. You see, false. Okay. Locker hai account ka child. It's not the other way around. Okay. So that's how you can check the relationship of two classes. Then you can check the instances of the class also. So for example, uh, let's say is instance is A is a instance of locker class, true, because I just created an object out of locker, right? Is it a instance of account? True. Why? Because locker is a child of parent, so of course अगर ये इसका object है तो उसका भी होगा. Correct? Clear? But it won't be other way around. Let's say if I created an object of account, let's say I created a object B equal to account, right? And let me give name N2, bank B2. Okay, I created this object, but let's say if I do B account, true, क्योंकि B का है, but will it be a part of locker? Let's see, false, because locker is a child of the parent, of this account. So अगर आपने parent का कोई object बनाया है, so it will not be an instance of child. Okay, cool. So that's how you can check if it is a subclass or an instance. Okay, then multiple inheritance. So I will not be going too much detail. I'll just quickly cover superficially, because I already told, right, that is used very rare. So whatever used is extensively, I have already covered in much detail, and you guys have already understood. So if you will try to understand more, it will be again unnecessary confusing. But I'll just give you a quick glance that how does it work in case of multiple inheritance, right? So how the super function works, right? So now that you have, got an overview of some of the example of super and single inheritance, you can introduce like examples on how multiple inheritance work, right? So super enables that functionality. So let's take this class. Okay, so this is a class A, जिसमें attribute है name. Then there is another class B, in which attribute has surname. Okay, now I'm creating a child class C, which inherits from both A and B. So both A and B parent class have been given to this child class C. Now what we are doing here is we are initializing again here accent name, that is the property of this child class. Then we are calling this name and surname for the previous classes, okay, because we have to take the arguments, values for these two arguments. Okay, so I assign this self account name for this class. Now for these two value, what I can do is I can simply initialize this and say that Mr. Singh. So basically I am initializing, if I don't give anything, then I'm initializing this way. So let's see what it does. Okay, so it doesn't have the output here. Let's try to do that together in Python. Okay, let's see what output we get. But again, as I said, right, even if you find it difficult to understand this last portion, you can choose to ignore, because already you have learned, which is more than sufficient. Okay, so this is just for completeness, I'm telling you. But you don't have to worry about if you find it little difficult. Okay, so I've created these two classes. I'm creating this child class. Okay. Let's say if I give something over here like this, what will happen is, now let me create a object of class C where I have to, let's see how many arguments it's asking. It's capital C. So it's asking for 3 names. So let's say, let me give account name is, let's say, N1, name 1 is N2, surname is N3. Okay, let's see what it does. So, so it has account name that is N1, then it has name as Mr. Singh, okay, and surname it does not have. Oh, okay, got it. So, wait, uh, okay, yeah. So what it does is basically it ignore these two values. Why? Because I did not initialize it, because that's how I'm telling, right, what to override and what not to override. So simply it says it assigned this value to name and it did not give anything to surname, right? So what you can do is, ideally you should be giving these two values over here just like we were giving previously, right? So you can give something like this, and then if you work, wait, what did just happen? uh okay, super init. So here it was working because it was from the same class. Here it is from different class, so it is not working. So what we can do about it? Okay, so it says that it take two positional argument but three were given, because by default it's taking self. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me do some iteration on this, because this seems to be confused. There seems to be some confusion around how we would be wanting to override it, right? But as I said, of course, this does not is you. This is not used much. Okay, so anyhow, but I will be letting you know. Like, so let me do some clear. Let me find some clear cut examples, so that we can demonstrate that how one will be overridden to other, right? But for this example, what we learned is that simply you can define, one class and the other, and in this child class you can pass these two variable. So here what will happen is, whatever you are passing in this variable, right? So this will be overwritten to this in the same sequence. So let's say if, so this ascent name is already taken by this, then there is this name, right? So whatever you will write over here, this value will be going to this name function. Okay, so let's say you, if you want to give some fixed value, you can give that value over here, or you can give that simple name variable like we did previously. Okay, but I will try to give you some clear cut examples of this multiple inheritance. Okay, so with that, let's quickly move further. So this is again method resolution order MRO. So we can ignore this for now, right? So this will be, I think it will, I'll try to cover this also along with that example, because again in theory, if we read but with no clear example, then it will be difficult for you guys to understand. Okay, so but what it is telling you is simply method MRO tells Python how to search for inherited methods. So every class has this MRO attribute, okay, that allows to inspect the order. So for example, here if I do this C dot MRO, right? Let me copy paste this attribute. As you can see, it is telling you the order. So class C is the C. So because I have given A class first, so first it will be checking whatever is there in the A. It will be using that, right? And then it won't be, it will not be you going to the B. So if let's take one uh, uh, thing, right? So let's say if you define something over here, right? And you give some value over here, so it will be taking the value from A only. So that is what the this order is all about. So let me do one thing, let me get you that clear cut example so that things are more clear for you. Okay, fine. So then what do we have? Okay, so this is again that multiple inheritance thing only, so that we have already learned. Then you have something called polymorphism. So what is this polymorphism is? It's nothing but, sometimes you have certain features. Okay, so what is this polymorphism mean? So in English dictionary, if you check, this means for a similar words. Okay, so it is an important feature of a class definition in Python. It is utilized when you have commonly named methods across classes or subclasses. Okay, so this allows function to use object of any of the these polyformic classes without needing to aware of distinction across the class. So what they are saying is it can happen that I have two similar function names in two different classes. Then how do I make sure that from which class I'm calling that function? Okay, so it can be carried out through inheritance with subclass making use of the base class methods or overriding them, right? When several classes or subclasses have same method names but different implementation for these methods, then these classes are polymorphic because they are using a single interface to use with entities or different type. Okay, a function will be evaluate these polymorphic methods without knowing classes are invoked. So let's see. So let's take this case, right? Just now we saw that let's say I have created a class shark, you know, and then I have I have defined some function over here. Let's swim backward, skeleton. Then I have defined another class. These two classes are not related, okay? So I have defined another class in which I have defined some same function swim. Okay, swim backwards and skeleton. But so both the functionality of the two are different, right? So how do I go about it? Simply, uh, this is like module, right? In module also we learned, so that is fine. So in module also I told you that you can have the same name provided it is in different module, because the namespace for that is different. So same thing here, you can have the same name of functions or variables provided they are of different class, and it should not be related. So always remember. So then otherwise what will happen is if you define one is child, one is parent, so your child will overwrite your parent class, right? So this thing is we are talking about when these two things are not related. So you can have it, there is no problem. Simply whenever you will call that object, let's say you are calling object from shark, and let's say there is another object from the clownfish. So simply आप अगर इस object को call करोगे swim function से, it will be giving you the output of the shark classes, and from the clownfish it will be giving you objects from the clownfish. So the bottom line is there is no problem of using the same function name between two different classes. Just that you have to be careful that from which class you are calling that function, right? And you have to clearly mention that this is the object of class shark, so that you are calling that function. Similarly, this is object of other class, so you are calling that function. That's all. Okay, clear? So it acts like a, I mean, a for loop, right? So I hope you already understand this, right? So I think no need of checking in detail. So any doubts in that? If you have two different classes functions, so yes, I already answered, right? Class A and B are independent of each other, because if they will be dependent, again you will have that conflict and one will be overwritten. Okay, cool. Then what else is remaining? How to achieve composition. Uh, So let me quickly see if this is really important. Otherwise, we can skip, because there are a lot of things which is really extra and not used much. So that's the reason I just want to remove it. So it's nothing but like I mean, there's no harm. You can learn. It's very simple stuff. So what is composition? So to achieve composition, you can instantiate other objects in the class and then use those instances. So for example, in this below example, we have instantiate the rocket class using self.rocket, and then using self.rocket in the method get maker. So what does it mean? Here I defined a class rocket, and I initiated this name and distance. So this name and distance I created. Then I have also created this function over here, launch. And here I'm just simply telling return name and distance and this sentence. Okay. So maybe this name has reached so and so distance. So this is the class I have created. Right. So now what I'm doing over here is simply I have created another class, Mars rover composition. Okay, here I have initialized it, name, distance, and maker also. So here what I'm giving is, in an instance, I'm giving this rocket name distance. So that's what it is telling, that I can use a class in the initialization of some other class. Okay, so that is possible. So here I have given this object. So this is an object now. Self.rocket is an object now. Okay, and this maker value I am giving, and this another function I have created here is get maker, and you can call whatever is the property of this by self.rocket.name. Okay, as simple as that. Again, this is, see, all these things exist. It's just that it's used very rare that you will create a class and then use within the class like that. Okay, but still, like, these things exist. That's the reason I'm just telling you. But I'm telling you already what is important, what is that you have to remember, right? What are certain things where you have to pay attention, or what is there which you can, go easy on. Even though, let's say, you don't understand it fully, it's fine. You are not here to understand 100% of the things. If you are able to understand just 70 and 80%, it is more than enough. Okay, okay, fine. So as I told you, right, so you can actually give it a try and do just copy paste this code and try to run in Python, and you can see, understand yourself. Okay, cool. So let's do one thing. Then there are special methods. Even these special methods, so yeah, so I'm just, so there is a quiz. Okay, so let's do one thing. I'll also take you to the special methods. So let's try to cover the special methods, then tomorrow we'll take up the quiz. Okay, so that will be a homework for you guys. You come prepared, because tomorrow the first thing I'll do is the quiz. Okay, and then we will be trying some hands-on the Python itself, creating some class, and how to actually use it. And there is another topic which is remaining, we'll try to cover that. Okay, so what are the special methods, functions, right? So which are enabled for some of the special work like deleting, finding length, and object finding size of the object. So for example, you want to print a list, right? Print out a list, you can simply do it. Okay, simply now let's create an object and see if we can do the same thing with the object instead of printing out the parameters explicitly. So मान लीजिए if you have created this class where you have initialized this book name, author, and page. So what you can do is, you have created the class, initialize the attributes, can you print it? So if you print this, print the object, right, you get these kind of things, isn't it? So for example here, we have created this class, right? So if I do print a, what do I get? These kind of things, that this is a class of main a, isn't it? Even if I do this a, I just see this main a. I did not get what are the attributes, what are the different functions within that, isn't it? So how do I get it? So I did not get any meaningful output here. I just got a reference of the object created. So I just know what that an object is created. Now what is the reference of it, right? So similarly here I created object, right? So let me create an object of AA. Okay, let's see. Right. So even if I do print AA, it won't give me anything meaningful. So it is just telling me that I have created an object and that is the reference location of that object. Right. Suppose I want to know the title of the book or author of the page and all this property. So what I can do is, there is already this special method called string. Okay. So this string method is, which can be part of any class, and it is used to create a string reference to an object. Okay, so it's kind of an informal string. Let's say which when you want to print something, you can get the information. So let's say if I try to get this, what do I have? It just say it's a method wrapper. Even in the string of this, I won't have anything. Right, so I don't have anything. It just says that it's a slot wrapper of this object. That's all. Okay. So what I can do is, for that I have to define this string method in the class itself. So whenever we are assigning, giving something, right? So that method, if I will assign in the class, then I should be able to see all these details. So how do I go about it? Simply, I can copy paste these things over there. So let's say, I can. So in this class, what I can do is, so I can define this string variable, just like this initialization thing is there, right? Same way you can define this string. So what it will do is, it will simply return whatever you want to return. So in this case, it is name, right? So I just want to return name, and let me delete all other thing, right? And this bracket means it will print the value, and what value it will print? Format self dot name. Okay, and I don't have any other thing, so I will simply delete it. So if I do that, right now, when I am initiating this, and now when I am simply printing AA, it is giving me this useful information instead of that thing, right? So this is again for the for the documentation purpose. Let's say if somebody wants to write what is that class and about, so you can define these string, and you can say that what all things are there, what are different attributes, functions are there, what that string does. So you can capture all these information, and if somebody will print that object, they will know what it is all about. Okay, cool. So similarly, you have other functions like delete. So like we delete the string, right? Same way we can delete the object also. So this is something which is by default. You don't have to add anything. So let's say if I want to delete this object, right? I can simply say delete AA. So it is deleted. Now if I print again now, it won't be there. It says A is not defined. So you can delete the object. Okay. Then so this is already there, delete. Yeah, so these were the two main functions, right? So we have already 10 minutes left. So let's take this quiz tomorrow, and I will ask you guys, please come prepared so that, you can test out yourself also. See, there are a lot of things which I taught you today. As I said again, I will repeat. It's not important that you are able to understand all the 100% of the things. This is not the expectation. Only the expectation from you is if you are able to get the 70 to 80% of the content, it is still good enough. So only thing which you have to brush up is how to create a class, how to create a subclass, how to define attributes, how to give value to those attributes, how to define methods, how do you create multiple objects out of the class, okay? And in case of parent and child, how you can override one another. If you just understand these things, that's all. Whatever the bound, unbound, and all other things I taught you, right? You can simply ignore those, okay? Because I think one thing I forgot to tell you, even those bound and unbound thing, that was for the previous Python version. Even in Python 3 now, those things does not exist. Now they have removed the way, because those are the different ways to call the functions. So as far as I believe, in Python 3 they have removed this thing that the way how you can call it, they have just uniformed it. And the way I am telling you so far, that how to create a class, how to call it, that is the only standard way. Okay. So yeah, I mean, any questions within that? No question or queries? Okay. So with that, then let's meet tomorrow, right? And yeah, I mean, just go through this slide again and try to revise all these stuff. Okay. And yeah, have a good day ahead and talk to you tomorrow. Thank you so much.